Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dream that you dare to dream really do come true. We all know the song. We all know the movie that the song is from. But do we really know anything about Judy Garland, the voice behind the song? Judy Garland is one of Hollywood's most well-known actors of all time, but she is also Hollywood's darkest tragedy. I'm a movie buff person. I really love any behind-the-scenes stories of actors, movies, and Judy was no exception. In fact, Judy was my first that inspired me to become a movie buff. Because, like many of us, I started with Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz when I was a kid. I was mesmerized by her performance of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and the moment I saw it. Luckily for me, my dad was also a movie buff person, and while I would watch this movie, he would tell me that she had a very sad life. And as a kid, I did not want to believe him, because if you watch the movie, you wonder, how could this woman have a sad life? I grew up watching her interviews. And to my surprise, my dad was right. She had a very sad life. We're going to go into the history of Judy Garland. We're going to start with her same person that we know her as today, Dorothy Gale in The Wizard of Oz. MGM earned the right to The Wizard of Oz in 1936. Originally, they didn't want Judy Garland. They originally wanted another well-known actor at the time, Shirley Temple. But due to contract issues, they could not get Shirley Temple, because I think Universal owned her. So they did the next best thing. Back in those days, there was a program that Hollywood studios had. It was a program that lasted until 1950. It was basically actors would be signed onto a studio. They would go onto the lot from like 9 to 5 and basically live off the lot. They would do vocal lessons, dancing lessons. If they were young, they were in school, Hollywood school. A lot of well-known actors did this for a long time. Well-known actors like Gene Kelly, Elizabeth Taylor, Debbie Reynolds. And among them was Judy Garland, and that is how she got her first big break in The Wizard of Oz. Unfortunately for Judy Garland, she was 15 at the time when she got the role, playing a 12-year-old girl from Kansas. So the studio had a lot of problems with her, especially her body, because she was a well-developed 15-year-old. So they would have her wear tight corsets. Louis B. Mayer, who owned MGM Studios at the time, would constantly ridicule her for her weight. And he would also put her on a very strict diet that consisted of his chicken noodle soup that he would make, which was basically just chicken broth, black coffee, and she had to smoke packs, and I mean packs of cigarettes every day. Not only was she on this strict diet, but she also was forced or prescribed pills. Pills that would wake her up, pills that would put her to sleep, pills that would energize her, and pills that were dieting pills because of the strict filming schedule that The Wizard of Oz was on. This started her down the path of drug addiction. And even though that movie was very successful and she was a very lucky 15-year-old girl, she kind of lost her childhood from that whole movie experience. Judy Garland actually said once in a quote that was from an article in Collider by Tiffany Green, "I was always lonesome. The only time I felt accepted or wanted was when I was on stage performing. I guess the stage was my only friend, the only place where I could feel comfortable. It was the only place where I felt equal and safe." That was just the start of her long but short career. Next we go into the next part that actually had a few successes but also led to her untimely death, her marriages. Judy Garland was actually married 5 times in her whole short life. 3 of them were very brief. 2 of them would break her down not only mentally but financially as well. Her second marriage was to a man named Vincent Minnelli, who, before they got married, was rumored to be a homosexual. they would go on to produce another big movie that she made, the next big movie after The Wizard of Oz, Meet Me in St. Louis, which had a lot of famous songs for her. She also would go on with him to have a very successful, well-known actor too, a baby named Liza Minnelli that they had together. But because he was noticeably a homosexual, and after Meet Me in St. Louis, she didn't really have that many successful movies afterwards. She was a box office flop in the 40s. And so MGM decided to fire her after 15 years because she wasn't making the big bucks like she used to. So that sent her mental state down a spiral. She tried to attempt suicide, and at one point, right before she divorced her husband, she locked herself into a bathroom and slit her own throat. Those two would eventually divorce, and she would marry her third husband right afterwards, who was another person that broke her financially, Sid Loft. Sid Loft was a gambling alcoholic, and she was a drug addict. He introduced alcohol into her life, making her life go from bad to worse. They had 2 kids together, and he would actually make 3 projects for her that would be her comeback projects. Star is Born, Judy Garland Show, and Judy Garland Live at Carnegie Hall. But because she was not in charge of the project financially, and Sid Loft was, she would see no money from any of these big, well-known projects that were big hits at the time. So she didn't have any money from all of the projects that she did with him. They would eventually divorce, and she had no money. And because in Hollywood she would show up to studios either intoxicated or she wouldn't even show up at all, Hollywood turned their backs on her. And so she was flat broke. She would eventually take up any job that she could and run down theaters, local bars, sing for money for as little as like $100 each performance. And even then, toward the end of her life, wouldn't even show up for those performances, or when she did, she would show up intoxicated. There were clear signs that she was losing weight. She couldn't remember where she was, and she died at the age of 47. Hollywood turned their backs on one of the most well-known actors, and she clearly had signs that she needed help. Since the beginning of The Wizard of Oz to the end of her life, but no one decided to help her. No one should live the life that Judy Garland had. History should never repeat itself. She lives on with 3 things: her voice, her work, and of course, I would not be a big fan of Judy Garland if I didn't mention her 3 children. Judy Garland deserved what she never got when she was alive. She deserved recognition for her work. She deserved recognition for her talent. And she also deserved recognition for her love. Thank you. Show the camera. Wait. Say hello.
Still here.